I will check YouTube, and we should be going live pretty soon. All right. RC, are a lot of dynasty rookie drafts going on now, or is the new league that I joined an anomaly?
I think more of an anomaly, maybe 50-50 of people of leagues draft. I didn't know my headset showed so much. Falling apart.
Whoever starts trickling into the chat, let us know if you could hear us too. That's always helpful.
Yeah, I have a new setup, so I'm trying to make sure subscriber only mode is turned on.
RC, the subscriber only mode's only for comments. Not, I think anybody could view it.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, we're gonna try
That
to
works fine.
work on private shows too for subscribers, but we're trying to figure that out with YouTube. So for right now, only channel subscribers could send a message.
I just wanted to make sure it wasn't locking the world out. Lost your sound.
Oh, you got
No,
me back? Okay.
Yep.
RC, I'm excited about the new Hard Knocks episode coming out tonight.
Silent Warriors saying sub-only mode check. Subscribers mode turned on. Only channel subscribers can send messages. Oh, okay.
Yep. So anybody can join RC. Just if they want to drop comments, they need to subscribe.
Okay. Got it.
Okay. Yeah. Circling back to the Giants, RC, what will Joe Shane do next on that show? I'm so curious to see.
I have not watched. I'm planning to, hoping to, but not planning too hard because I'm weighing back and forth of, do I really need to use up a lot of time watching the fact that they're morons and I already know it, so do I need to invest 5 hours for 5 episodes of my life to get what I already know, and it's just going to aggravate me. So
yeah,
I'm hoping to get to it, planning to get to it, but I have been slaying. Football is definitely coming back.
It's beautiful.
I'm on phone calls and messages and reading through reports and updating everything for the site, writing scouting report. We're just getting started and it's going crazy.
Yeah, I know it's heating up when my friends that are more casual fans start hitting me up about draft strategy and what to do. So that's always a good time. For those of you that saw our thumbnail, you noticed Stefon Diggs in a training camp interview. The first topic tonight is on the Texans training camp. RC wanted to share a couple of notes on it. RC, I think by picking Stefon Diggs, you probably have something to say about him. So I'll pass the mic over to you on what you wanted to share with the audience.
Yeah, I've got several camp notes from some bootleg video of things that I got to take glimpses of from different camps. But mostly the Houston information is going to be more what I'm being told. So you take that with somewhat of grain of salt, but it's a pretty reliable source and it's not too heavy information. But I'm just going to take it in order of what I have here, and I'm going to save the Diggs part for last because it was the thing that impressed me the most about my different Texans notes. So just taking them in order. Cam Akers obviously signed with Houston. I'm trying to get information on how he looked in his workouts. They would have worked him out because obviously he's got the Achilles injury he's coming off of last year. And what I did not know, what I really didn't consider, and I I don't know how much it's going to matter in the new universe of surgeries and everything else, but I knew it was Akers' second Achilles injury, but he's now had an Achilles injury and surgery on both feet. So this was this was the other foot Achilles. So I don't know if I know of a player that has had two blown Achilles on two separate feet, but that's what he's trying to come back from. So the fact that they're giving him a chance is at least a positive step. There must be something there that they see in his rehab. And we're seeing guys come back from the Achilles injuries quicker than ever, as far as time it takes them to get back. And then it's been a mixed bag of how well they're doing right off the bat. Some guys are coming off of it and they're pretty good, and some guys like a James Robinson, they don't seem to be ever recover from their Achilles issue. So trying to find out more about Akers, but an Achilles in each foot, man, that's a tall order to come back from. But
And
the fact that
RC,
they signed him is something.
but what about the depth chart there? I mean, you have Mixon and Damian Pierce. Like, even if he was fully healthy, it's no shot that he was going to pass Pierce on the depth chart, right?
Well, the reason that I'm interested in how Akers is really looking, whether the speed is there or what concerns they have, I thought Cam Akers looked good the second half of last year. He's a little nutty of a player, but I thought he looked good when he got his shots with Minnesota. Then he tore his Achilles, and that was the end of that story. If he's back to normal, and I don't know if he can ever be, but if he's back to normal, this signing is another log on the fire to me of this staff is really starting to get out of the Damian Pierce business. He was the starter last year. Singletary was a distant backup to begin the year. I thought Pierce looked fine, but he wasn't really racking numbers, but they didn't have a very good offensive line either. Then they started working Singletary in, who started making hay out of it. So then you had to question, is this a Pierce issue or was it the O-line issue? Because Singletary's looking fine. Then Singletary just took over, and by the end of the season, Damian Pierce was just a kick returner. So this Cam Akers signing, I don't know yet if it's just a dart throw or if this is we don't trust Damian Pierce to be the backup to Joe Mixon. So that's just number one. Tight end wise, my source was telling me that the tight end that has been starting to work with Dalton Schultz wasn't at practice or something.
Can I guess him?
Go ahead.
Kate Stover?
No. Because that's who I've got my eye on the most, because that's Stroud's BFF. They also have Brevin Jordan there, who showed some sparks last year, who I'm not a big fan of, but we got some money off of him late last year on some prop betting. So he's got a little space in my heart now where he didn't have any before. But Tegan Quitterano has resurfaced back into the tight end rotation, working with the first team. I don't know if that's a temporary thing. My source says he's looking good. He did draw a start his rookie season. He's an undrafted free agent, if I remember correctly. And then by the end of the year, he was drawing starts somewhat because of injury issues, but he was starting to make his way. Then the new regime came in last year and he was a ghost. But I was surprised to hear he was working some first team ahead of Stover. Not that that would be a shock because Stover's a rookie and all that, but I almost just kind of wrote off Teagan. But apparently he is alive and kicking and trying to make the team. So that's just an aside. I don't think there's any fantasy ramifications from that or any problems with Stover. I've not heard good or bad on Stover. I just know him and Stroud are best of buds, so there's going to be something there for fantasy. Petrie, the safety, is starting to also take some snaps and work out as a nickel corner, which is, I like him as a nickel corner. He's a good safety too. I think he's going to stick at safety this season because there's more of a need for it than at corner, but he could shift there if he just shines at it or they have a need. But that changes his IDP projections. And 2 years ago, Petrie was standing at the top of our list of safeties for the current and the future before D'Amico Ryans came in. With D'Amico Ryans' regime last year, Petrie took a different style of play at safety and his numbers went down. He didn't play poorly, his IDP production went down. It would shift, his IDP production would shift again if he's going to be a slot corner compared to just a full-on safety. So I'm putting that out there just for IDP purposes, that Petrie could go down another notch as a DB if he moves from safety to nickel corner. It's not for sure. It's just starting. They're just taking looks at him there. All of the John Mechie glowing blurbs from OTAs from earlier in the summer and already in this round of camp practices, it apparently is real. He's seems to be at full recovery from his cancer issues, and he let me hit the cough button real quick. He's looking better than ever, supposedly, leading coaches and players to talk about it and notice it. And to me, if that is true, and I wouldn't doubt it, he was a solid prospect before he had to have the bout with cancer. But if he's back, this is quite the wide receiver group. He's not going to crack it. He's not going to jump into the starting trio. But he's a hell of a number 4 wide receiver that's probably going to command some play time and some targets. But then Noah Brown is also there, and he played really well last year. If Noah Brown and Mechie are your number 4 and 5 wide receivers, those two guys could start on probably half the teams in the league. So this is a pretty hellacious wide receiver group, which is good for CJ Stroud. But I don't think either of them are going to be anything for fantasy. Even if one of the big trio gets hurt and they get shoved in as starters, they're still going to be at the back of the line. Where I think they affect fantasy is every time I read something or listen to what Stroud is saying, and now with the Mechie reports, and I know what Noah Brown's capable of and what Xavier Hutchinson is capable of. I watched all of most of Jordan Love's 2023 season rise to power in the second half of last year. And the thing that just jumped out to me about the Jordan Love uprising was he has no real number 1, but he's got 5 different options in play every time he drops back to pass, and he's just not leaning on one. He will not be enslaved by throwing to, he's got to throw everything to Garrett Wilson, or he's got to throw everything to Devontae Adams, or pick your. That's just not the way that offense goes when you got that powerhouse trio, actually 4 or 5 deep with a good tight end in Green Bay. I'm starting to wonder if that's what's going to happen to Houston, where they got all these great receivers and they're all going to cannibalize each other to be great for the NFL. But who do you pick for fantasy? Are 2 of them going to be stars? Will all 3 of the trio be stars? Like, well, how's this going to go? I was very confident a couple months ago Tank Dell would stand tall among them because that's the one above all of them that CJ Stroud talks about the most. But now I'm starting to worry that I'm a little too overheated on Tank Dell because there's just not enough footballs to go around unless Stroud's going to have a Patrick Mahomes second year in the league 50 touchdown season, which I wouldn't put out of the realm of possibilities. But if they just have a normal good offense, I don't know how all 3 of those guys starters are going to be, or wide receiver 1.5s, or trying to become wide receiver 1s. So it's something I'm watching closely, trying to figure out and trying to maneuver for projections. But Mechie coming on is not helping the situation because he's going to play snaps and somebody's going to come off the field when he goes on, and that may be Tank Dell that comes off the field. And that's a luxury in the NFL when you can shuffle guys in and out like that and don't have to wear them down. But if I have Tank Dell, I don't want him coming off the field for 10 snaps for John Mechie. I don't want him coming off the field for any snaps. So, and he may not, but it's something that I'm watching closely because that whole situation just keeps getting muddier and muddier. Second to last note, the rookie Lassiter out of Georgia, looks like he's going to be the other starting corner with Derek Stingley, that he's going to go from rookie to starter. I heard Stefon Diggs talking about him, and he's talked about him in a way like it was almost a given that Lassiter was their second best corner and that they're counting on him to just step right in. We'll see how that progresses in the preseason, but I've been projecting the Texans defense and the IDP for Lassiter as if he was going to start, but with some hedge that he wasn't. But it looks like he is at this stage, if I take Stefon Diggs' words to heart. Which leads me to my last and biggest, I guess I'll say, revelation about what's going on in Houston. I was watching Stefon Diggs at a post-practice press conference, and I was so struck by how, when I say well-spoken, I don't mean that to demean him or just say, well, I thought he was dumber, and look at him stringing words together. It's not that. He's a leader. Like, I'm used to the Stefon Diggs that goes ballistic on the sidelines and acts like a fool. That's the Stefon Diggs that gets stuck in my mind. Like, he had some problems with management in Minnesota, then he had problems with management in Buffalo. So I'm like, Stefon Diggs just didn't sit well with me from his last 2 stints. Obviously a great wide receiver, but personality wise, I was thinking, man, it's good that Buffalo got rid of him, and boy, Houston might have some problems taking this on. I listened to 15 minutes of Stefon Diggs holding court with the media, and I was blown away by how graceful and how detailed and how serious and kind of just he just comes off as a leader, which is brilliant for Houston to get with their young group of from Stroud on down. I was wildly impressed with Diggs, and I know that Joe Mixon, who gets a bad rap from when he was kicked out of school for his incident back in college, he gets a bad rap for being a knucklehead, but he's not a knucklehead. Joe Mixon was a voted team captain on Cincinnati. That was a big loss for the locker room for Cincinnati. I get the move that they made or what they're trying to do, but Joe Mixon is a leader that just got snatched by Houston, and then Stefon Diggs is a leader of men that just got snatched by Houston. With the addition of Mixon and Diggs, that's some great moves by DeMeco Ryans to put those kind of guys around a really young team. They could have drafted or tried to trade for whatever, any number of running backs, but they went and they got Cincinnati's team leader, team captain. Then they go get Diggs on purpose, who's looks like a leader to me, and maybe all of his antics in Minnesota and Buffalo are warranted because he sees it better than I can see people getting frustrated with Mike Zimmer in a heartbeat. I can also see people getting frustrated with your boy Ken Dorsey as the offensive coordinator in Buffalo and getting mad with. So maybe it wasn't that Diggs was getting sideways with Josh Allen or anything else. Maybe he was getting sideways with management, which I can totally see from Diggs' perspective. So I'm backing off the, hey, maybe Diggs is a headache, to this is potentially really brilliant on Houston's end.
RC, think about it from Diggs' perspective, though, right? They shaved off the 3 years on his contract, which became a deal for him. So he's effectively on a 1-year deal with Houston with a nice young quarterback inside of a dome, right? So, I mean, that helps too. He's not outside in Buffalo where his production could be hampered by weather, although he has Josh Allen, granted. Now, if he balls out this year, if he goes ballistic, this is his last shot to get a real deal. And if he develops rapport with Stroud, Texas front office is going to they're going to have a very tough decision, because if Stroud is banging on Nick Caserio's door saying like, hey, you need to extend this guy, then Texans kind of have to pay him the market rate, which he's probably looking at seeing Justin Jefferson get $35 million. And, obviously he won't get that amount, but he'll get a significant raise to what he's making now.
I don't know. Mike Evans got paid heavy. DeAndre Hopkins is potentially going to get a bump, and he's a couple years older than Diggs, if I remember correctly. Devontae Adams is making good money in his 30s. He may put pressure. And just think about it from Houston's standpoint. They were able to do all of these things because their team is constructed cheap, and the bills are going to come due when Stroud is going to be getting more money, not this year, not next year, but the year after. So they've got a lot of cushion to play with for 2024 and 2025. Nico Collins' deal is essentially a 2-year deal through 2025. It's longer than that. It's bigger than that, but it's really a 2-year deal where they can move on from him in 2026 if the burden is too much when they're having to pay Stroud. So I chuckle when I see people go, oh, they paid. I hear this from different football analysts, like, oh, they paid Nico Collins number one money. They didn't pay Nico Collins number one money. They paid him a good raise because his contract was going to come. He was going to be in the T. Higgins and Brandon Ayuk position next year. So it could have been a real problem next year where they would have had to franchise tag him or get into a fight. Instead, they've got this big cushion because they have such a young team this year that they can pay him good money now and good money next year instead of bad money now and then get into a big fight and pay him big money for just next year, like on a franchise tag, they really did a smart thing and kind of broke the two over his now and later, or for now and next year, which has got to make Nico feel good. And I'm sure Nico takes that deal, because if he were to play out and go, well, I'm not signing that deal, I'm going to play out this year so I can get big production and get big money in free agency next year. Well, now you got Diggs, and when Dell comes, I think Nico Collins knows he may be third in the race for targets and production, and he's not going to want to have that maybe going into his free agency year next year. So he avoids that by signing the deal, the extension with Houston, which is really just, again, for this year and next year, allows them to get out of it the year after that, when the Stroud money is going to be due and Will Anderson money is going to be due and all the other money is going to be due. So they've got a cushion these next 2 years, and they seem to be smartly using it. But I was really taken aback by listening to Stefon Diggs talk, and then knowing that Joe Mixon is also a really nice team leader. Those are two really smart moves that Houston pulled off on a team that made it to the playoffs without that type of leadership last year. Now you get another year of Stroud, and you get two veteran guys like that, and they picked up a lot of veterans on defense. Al Shair is another big-time leader. So Houston is, I don't know that they're going to go all the way this year, but they're getting themselves in position to make a serious run at it this year and be in prime position. To your point, they'll need Diggs maybe again next year, unless Mechie is so good that they're like, well, we're now experienced on our own, so we're not going to, Diggs wants a mega contract. They can bypass that, and then they have Mechie and Dell and Nico got another year of experience. But if they bring this band all back together again for this year or next year, Houston's going to be quite the dangerous team. Not that we already didn't know that they were good, but they're like somebody's using some thought putting this 2024 team together, and I think it's D'Amico Ryans. It's not the GM.
Yeah. I mean, hard to know who's actually pulling the strings, but I mean, before D'Amico walked in there, really, the Texans weren't. I mean, it's not fair to really put that on the GM since, Stroud wasn't there before, but it shows you, RC, Houston Texans were almost like a laughingstock of the NFL for a very long time. They get someone like Stroud, and all of a sudden they go from, one of the worst teams in the league, and now they're going to be a perennial contender for probably the next decade. But as far as the receiving core goes for fantasy football in 2024, it's almost like a crapshoot between those three guys, right? It's hard to really say who's going to be the wide receiver one, but Diggs coming on, showing some leadership, that surprises me. I wasn't a fan of the move originally, but I guess what you said has me warming up to it a little bit at least.
And I think they all see there's something about this team. There's something about this coaching staff. There's obviously something about this quarterback. For the guys like Mixon and Diggs who have fallen short, this is their chance. And I think they smell it. So kudos to, I think I'm going to put it all on D'Amico Ryans. I think because he's an ex-player and he's got his ear to the ground and got a good sense of that because he was a team leader for years on his teams. I think he just knows it. I think he's just got a feel for it, and he's just telling the GM what to do, and they executed it, and kudos to them.
And maybe if Diggs goes off, RC, if he's having one of those fits, D'Amico's probably the perfect position to, keep him in line, and Diggs will probably listen because he's a former player, as opposed to someone like McDermott or something like that. I mean, I remember, I have a vivid memory of Diggs going crazy on the sideline in Buffalo, Josh Allen looking lost, not really doing anything about it, McDermott in his own world. I don't think that's how it's going to be with the Texans.
That is a fantastic point, because I was just starting to have the same flashback to when Diggs was going nuts. Josh Allen sat on the bench and and buried his head down. I don't think CJ Stroud would do that.
No.
I don't think Joe Mixon will let it happen if he's on the sidelines. So, and I really don't think CJ Stroud would put up with it for 2 seconds, which makes me also think back to when DeAndre Hopkins mouthed off to Will Levis,
What did Will Levis
coming
do?
off the field on something. I thought Will Levis was going to take his head off, and it was DeAndre Hopkins he was mouthing off, and then Levis heard what he said. They were walking in like past each other in 2 different directions. Hopkins said something. Levis spun right around and started following Hopkins, and Hopkins couldn't get out of there fast enough. That's a moment. That's what you want from
Yes.
leadership. And Levis isn't going to take any. Levis would have broken DeAndre Hopkins in 2. Stroud, I don't think, will put up with that for 2 seconds. Diggs would be traded if D'Amico Ryans or Stroud senses that's happening. I think Diggs will be gone from that team in a flash. But it also then makes me think. I think Anthony Richardson is the same exact way from last year's draft in that division. Levis, Stroud, and Richardson. If anybody were to say anything to Richardson, he would kill them. He's bigger than most of every player on the team. I wouldn't want to say anything to Anthony Richardson or CJ Stroud, and especially not Will Levis. So the Josh Allen burying his head and looking at his feet while Diggs is going off is a problem. Josh Allen's super talented, but maybe there's a reason why Diggs is upset there and why Buffalo was always falling short at the last second.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm excited to see what Stroud does. If there's one winner in this situation, RC, you have to think that CJ Stroud is poised to have a pretty big season there. But also Joe Mixon. If the passing game's humming like that, I mean, it's going to take a lot of pressure off the, they're not going to probably play the run as much because they have so many freaking receivers on the field. And not to mention Joe Mixon's a pretty good pass catching back too. So I mean, I think the winners of all this with the receiving core coming along is Mixon and Stroud.
I don't know. I haven't really thought about it, but there can't be another team that has 3 number 1 wide receivers on their team. That if you peeled off one of Diggs, Nico, or Dell and sent them to half or more of the teams in the league, they wouldn't be the number 1 wide receiver for their team. And they've got all 3 of them. So no team comes to mind off the top of my head that has a trio as talented as them. And then CJ Stroud is arguably going to be a top 2-3 quarterback passing talent if he's not already. And then you gifted him that receiver core and given him a solid enough running back. That's going to be something to behold potentially. If D'Amico Ryans cuts it loose. And we saw from last year, I think they wanted to be a running team. Obviously, Stroud was getting his feet underneath of him as a rookie, but they quickly spun to, oh, damn, let's just let CJ Stroud do whatever he wants.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what goes down there, RC. But going back to one of your other points, CJ Stroud and Will Levis definitely won't put up with anybody's crap. But the difference is, I think Will Levis will actually fight the person across from him, whereas Stroud will probably just make him feel bad. He uses his brain. I think Levis will actually get into a fist fight with one of his guys. He seems like that type.
Yeah, if we had an MMA tournament of all 32 starting NFL quarterbacks, I think at the end of it, Levis will have won the tournament.
It'll be Levis versus AR in the final, that's for sure.
Yeah, it might be Levis versus Baker. Like, I could see Baker cheating, like bring it like he'll have brass knuckles in his waistband and bring him out like a heel in wrestling and cheat his way to the finals. But and he'll sweep the leg, but I think Levis will crane kick him and get the victory.
Well, I think this is a good time to segue to another topic, unless there's anything else you wanted to talk about with Houston. And that's going to be out in Baltimore, RC. You wanted to give a Rasheen Ali update. What are you hearing in camp? Anything worthy of us to consider in dynasty rookie drafts or any
I'm
redraft?
I'm only here to say he's alive. The first sightings of him actually playing football have happened. I know he caught a great pass, I was told, in practice yesterday. So when somebody texted me that information, I was so happy, and the person thought I was so happy that, he had made this great catch, and I'm like, no, I literally haven't heard anything about him because he hasn't been able to play. Still rehabbing from his did he break his wrist? Break his elbow, something he did at the Senior Bowl that he was rehabbing from. So he's finally on the field and playing. So I have no more reports off of that. I don't expect him to be running with the ones or anything like that because he's just getting back to football. But it was good to hear that he is alive and well and playing football.
In
Bicep, yes, thank
biceps. Yep.
Yep. Thank you, William, for that.
Okay.
Tore his bicep, but he is healed and playing.
Excellent. Good to know. Let's shift to the next news item. You want to give an update on KC's number 2 running back, which I think I saw this being reported in the mainstream media too, RC. It seems like there's somebody running with the first team not named Pacheco.
Yep, Pacheco, when Pacheco's not playing or when he's rotating out or if they just have him a day off or what have you, running with the first team somewhat, which is mild news to watch because I think this is the guy that can ultimately win this job, is Deneric Prince is getting first team snaps, and that doesn't necessarily mean he's got, he's the new number 2, but it's great to see that he is getting some of that work, because Reese Zammit is not getting that work yet. He's not been. They're not gonna let guys get first team work for no reason unless there's like some serious attrition. You have to kind of earn it when you're a guy like Deneric Prince. So Clyde Edwards-Helaire signed a very minimal contract to go back to Kansas City. He's never lived up to his expectations. You have to think he is the week 1 handcuff at this stage. It's the safe money because Kansas City does keep bringing him back. But I think Prince eventually is going to win that number 2 job. It wouldn't surprise me if it didn't happen for week 1, that he's just playing that well and that CEH just really isn't that good. Or CEH is the listed number 2, but then, Pacheco were to blow his knee out. I think I might rather have Prince for the long haul. It might be CEH right off the bat, but they might really speed it up on Prince, just like they did when CEH was the starter with Pacheco's rookie year. But then they started pushing Pacheco more and more because they saw it coming. Prince is in that same realm of Pacheco where I think they value him a lot higher than anybody in football analysis does. So the fact that he's getting some first team work already, that's a good sign.
Yeah, that's encouraging. So we'll see if that sticks and watch him during. Go ahead,
I know
RC.
a lot of our dynasty owners have Pacheco from the jump, from our golden call on that a couple years ago. So if you're trying to play the handcuff game, I've mentioned it last year, but it's starting again this year. I don't think Deneric Prince is going to be denied that number 2 spot much longer, because I just don't think CEH can hold up. He may get the veteran first opportunity at it if something happens to Pacheco, but if it's long term with Pacheco, I think they're going to start pushing Prince to see what he can do.
Yeah, definitely. We saw glimpses of CEH last year, and he just doesn't look like he has any juice. So it wouldn't shock me if Prince passes him up on the depth chart pretty easily. Okay, let's move to New England, where Gerard Mayo, I believe, was quoted saying that Brissett is the most pro-ready quarterback they have on their roster. I mean, everybody probably could have guessed that going in, right? May needed a lot of work, so it doesn't shock me too much. RC, was that the mainstream consensus, or have I been listening to you and Ross too much?
You've been listening to myself and Ross too much. What I've heard the most in the last couple days or so to a week is two situations of, oh, Drake May is going to win that job by week. There's three guys that a lot of analysts who I'll say I'm going to call them the fly by night analysts. And what I mean by that is that they've been playing fantasy baseball for the last 6 months. So now they're getting ready to get back to football. So they watch the draft, and that's about all the work that they've done in the off season. But now they're here as mega football fans to tell you all about fantasy and football situations. And that group of people, the fly-by-night analysts, I see them all going, oh, there's three quarterbacks that they know are going to start week one. Drake May is going to start week one. He's better than Jacoby Brissett. He is not, and Gerard Mayo knows it. I would not be surprised if Brissett was the quarterback there for the next 2 years. I would not be surprised if Brissett held May off for a while. That Brissett plays well enough that they give him another contract to stay there, because I think he's just on a 1-year contract right now. Now, if the Patriots are terrible by mid-season, I'm sure they're going to maybe give May a look if he's at all ready. But I think Brissett is going to make May look bad by comparison. So I hear a lot of, Drake May's going to win that job. Then I'm hearing a whole lot of, JJ McCarthy's going to win that job. There's no way in hell JJ McCarthy, well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, Sam Darnold could have a piano drop on his head while he's walking downtown somewhere. But shy of that, Minnesota thinks Sam Darnold is it. In the same manner, I think the Patriots think Jacoby Brissett can be that kind of quarterback. They're hoping that May develops, but this current year, I think they know Brissett is way better than May, and they believe Darnold is way better than McCarthy, which if he is, that's my bet on the under of Minnesota's win totals and everything else is going to be good as gold, because they're both terrible. But the other one that I'm seeing starting to pipe up is, Justin Fields is going to start over Russell Wilson. There is no chance, and especially, was it Jeff who was laying out the case of why Russell Wilson is the fit with Arthur Smith?
It might have been Jeff or Derrick. I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember who was laying that out, or not.
Not the fit, but that they're connected to each other. That was Ben Albright.
That was Ben. I think it was Ben, but he was talking about how structurally, offensively, I heard somebody talking about the Wilson fit, but that aside,
yeah,
Wilson, from a leadership and experience standpoint, is way more of a fit than Justin Fields. But everybody that gets hyped on rookies and younger players and against older players, they're sure May, McCarthy, and Fields are going to start week one. I don't think there's a chance, barring injury, that either of those three guys is going to start week 1.
RC, I hate to tee this up for Vikings fans, but I have a lot of them in my friend group. Oddly, I'm in Los Angeles. I don't know why a lot of my friends are Vikings fans. Maybe because they have the same color as the Lakers or something. But anyways, they're interpreting the situation there as, oh my God, Darnold is doing so good and KOC could actually make him a starter. And now we have 2 QBs. I know I'm teeing you up to slam the crap out of the golf ball right now, but what do you have to say to that?
I mean, there's going to be no talking them out of it. I could say that he's terrible, and they'll come back and say, no, he's good. He just needed to get with the right coach. Like, I've heard that for three teams and 5 coaches now. He's a coach killer that everybody keeps saying is going to be so great. All I'm going to say is we'll see on the field. We'll let the field be the judge of that. But Sam Darnold is not good. He is a bottom 3 week 1 starting quarterback on a team that I have no idea what they're doing.
In a similar situation, RC, to last year, he was with Kyle Shanahan, and he played that last week against the Rams in a meaningless game, and I don't think he looked all that great. I can't remember his exact stats, but he didn't do anything there to make me think that, oh, maybe, he's putting it together or something. But again, it was a meaningless game, so maybe they weren't showing their hand or anything offensively, so hard to tell.
I don't know how he gets away with what he's gotten away with. I don't know how people still have faith in him after what we've seen in New York, Carolina, San Francisco. I don't know if there was another stop. Was he with Cleveland for a moment? He
remember.
Is not good. There are some backup quarterbacks that I can say, man, if they just got the chance, but Sam Darnold is not one of them.
Did you feel that way about Geno? That if he was in the right opportunity, he could be like average guy? Okay.
No, I thought Geno was going to be a bust, and that was true for about a decade.
Yeah. And then obviously,
it wasn't a decade. He was younger than that, so about 7 years.
Yeah.
So 6-7 years from now, maybe Darnold will maybe it's coming up on his 6th or 7th year. But with Geno, I will say this: Geno as a backup, you started to see him fill in right before he got the job, and you started to see, wow, Geno Smith is. I thought he was terrible, but he kind of handled himself okay. I've not seen that with Sam Darnold. I've seen Sam Darnold fill in different places and play in the preseason, and he looks as lost can be most of his time. So, the suckers bet, the thing that always gets everybody, and it's what's getting people, I think, on Caleb Williams right now. And I'll use the Senior Bowl. My experience is that the Senior Bowl is what always stands out to me to give the best description. Football people put so much on what a quarterback looks like in 7-on-7s, 11-on-11s, non-contact. They put the non-contact jersey on them. They run the plays. Everything looks good in practice, or if it doesn't look good, but then the next day it looks good, and they're thinking, man, our playbook is great. The quarterback is just delivering the ball right where it needs to be. That's all in a very safe and sterile environment. And I would see that at the Senior Bowl. Back when they would play the entire week, they'd practice on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and maybe Thursday, have Friday off, and then play the game on Saturday. So they would have the 7-on-7s and 11-on-11s non-contact the first 2 days. And I remember Logan Thomas looked fantastic at quarterback, which ended up getting him, I think, drafted 2nd round to Arizona that year. But I mean, he's a big dude with a big arm, and everything looked great. Then all of a sudden, when they started having, back then they would have a contact practice or two. Then it started to fall apart, but they try to have a non-contact jersey on the quarterbacks. But as things got more aggressive, the quarterbacks didn't look so good. Then they get in the game when there's real contact and they look like they've never played football before. Totally different guy on the game day versus the two-hand touch practices earlier in the week. So we're in that stage right now where there's no contact, so everybody looks great. And then we get into the game. It's like Bryce Young last year. Everybody, Bryce Young, he's ahead of his time. He really knows what he's doing. He may not have all the measurables, but man, does that guy know how to deliver the ball where it's got to go. He's such a leader. He's doing all the right things in practice. Then he gets in the game and it's a complete and utter disaster. And I think when Logan Thomas had his debut, he may have gone 1 for 9 passing in his debut. And Ross said 4th round draft pick. So he was a 4th round draft pick that got drafted that high. People were shocked. But it was all because of how good he looked at the Senior Bowl. And he's just a physically imposing looking guy, but he was a terrible quarterback. So, but that didn't stop the NFL from getting suckered into him. So all these reports on how Darnold looks so good right now. Of course, Darnold, if he's working with the first team in a sterile environment where you can't touch him, of course he's going to look good, especially in 7-on-7. All of those guys. But when reality strikes, that's when Caleb Williams is going to start to struggle, and Darnold. Well, Brissett won't. Brissett's. I didn't think Brissett would be very good, but he's one of those guys that's grinded, and we've seen him fill in and look good. I have not seen Darnold grind and fill in and look good among the names that we're talking about.
We'll definitely keep our eye on that. RC, one tweet that's been circulating, and this is from Pretty Ricky, who he has a spotty track record on Twitter. I think he's been more right than wrong, but he's obviously not one of the mainstream guys. He said that the Patriots had a offer on the table, 3 first-round picks for, I think it was Minnesota making the offer. I can't remember his exact tweet, but basically the owner overruled it. Mayo and I believe Wolf wanted to take the deal, trade down, and get McCarthy. RC, how do you feel about that?
I have watched a lot of Hard Knocks shows and the Amazon version of it over the years. And whenever they give us glimpses of how teams are run behind the scenes, it's always mystifying how awful these teams really are at running their team, scouting, and even when they get it right, even when they're on, like I truly believe last year that most of the Carolina staff wanted to take CJ Stroud. Then the owner and his wife come in and blow the whole thing up. So Robert Kraft he's paid the money, so he's earned the right to go ahead and make a quarterback decision. But they usually, when they get involved, it's a bad decision. When Jerry Jones gets involved, it's a bad decision. About the best thing I've seen an owner do in the last decade was Arthur Blank giving the thumbs up and say, let's go get Michael Penix. That's maybe the single best ownership thing I have seen in many a year, because usually it's completely butchered concepts from the owner, and then you could see from the GMs watching, I always want to call him Brandon Beane because he was worked with him for Buffalo, but Joe Shane, who left Buffalo and is now the Giants GM, that's getting obliterated. I mean, You think Joe Biden's getting a hard time on social media? I think Joe Shane might be second. He might be about to pull in the first with taking the most hits. Him and the head of the Secret Service are having a really bad month on social media. But I think most of the GMs are just like that. They're not good at business. They're good at having interned or clerked and worked as assistants for other programs where other teams where they got hired because they're an ex-player, they're a relative of somebody, they have some contact to get them in the door. Then they work really hard in the corporate structure. They make all the copies, they attend all the meetings, they take notes, they don't fall asleep, they go out with the guys afterwards and have some drink. I mean, but all they're doing is learning by watching their peers, the people above them who are doing it terrible as well. They just happen to be the ones that maybe make a good presentation, have a great resume, maybe went to a great school, but there's no if there probably is, but I'm going to say it, that there's probably no GM where you go and look and go, oh, look at they ran XYZ Corporation. They were at Apple for 10 years in operations management, and then they decided to get into football, and they worked their way up in 3 or 4 years, and now they're the GM of such and such team. It's usually people whose first and real jobs were grunts in the either scouting department or admin, and they just kind of worked their way up being good corporate soldiers, learning from people who were terrible. And they're just really good employees that the owner likes and that they can talk a good game. And I'm sure they know how to do some of the payroll and negotiations and are good with numbers, but they don't know what these players are really worth. They don't have any business skills. They're like politicians that are just horrific at spending our money as a country. They're just bad negotiators, bad at business, but they're in charge of some of the world's biggest, most observed businesses, and it's right down the line. I can't even tell you a GM or whole department off the top of my head where I'm just blown away by the genius of it all. I mean, even the Rams are running circles around the league right now. You look at Les Snead, and I always joke he looks like he just got back from surfing and is now going to put in a little bit of remote work on some football stuff. Like, I don't know if that's Sean McVay is doing. I don't know if it's his scouting department is reading, some good material from us or somewhere else. I don't know what happens, but everybody I've encountered there's only one guy that I consistently look at and go, that guy's better at this than I am. And I don't say that to try to promote myself. I'm more putting down everybody else. But Will McClay of the Dallas Cowboys, I'm always marvel at the players that he pulls late in drafts and off of undrafted free agents. Guys, I didn't see it in. The numbers didn't ring up right, and I just ignored them. But then when I go back and I look through everybody's undrafted free agents and kind of put them through another audition and watch a couple minutes of their tape to just see who these guys are, if they're going to re-impress me with a second time around, I look at the Dallas guys and I'm going, how did he find that guy? That guy makes no sense. The measurables aren't right. His production isn't right. But then you start peeling back through it, and there's some logical reason why they're hiding in the weeds, and he gets them all. And that's why Dallas is always dangerous, because of what Will McClay is doing. And unfortunately, I don't think he makes the choice of coach. Mike McCarthy, and he's got to deal with Jerry. But when Jerry turns the draft over to him after the first or second round, McClay, to me, is as good as it gets out there. But he's a guy, you never hear about him. You never see him rushing out to do a press conference. You never see him down on the sidelines, visible on the cameras. He's not even the GM of that team. Jerry Jones is listed as the GM of the team. I think Will McClay, like myself, literally just stays in his office with caffeinated sodas and watches football.
Yeah.
And
maybe
I don't think anybody else in his field does that.
Maybe he's their Ernie Adams, RC, because that's what he was to Belichick, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, it's interesting to hear that we always speak pessimistically about most NFL GMs front offices, right? But it was kind of refreshing to hear a guy you have a lot of respect for, that being McClay. But let's transition, RC. Let's go to our next topic where you wanted to...
I'm going to also say, I'll bet all of the non-Will McClay guys, I bet their handicap in golfing is fantastic. And I'll bet they really know their way around a wine list at dinner. And I'll bet they probably get a good 2 hours of working out in per day. But what they aren't doing is locking themselves in a room and working themselves to the bone, destroying their body through atrophy of sitting too long and watching football from every angle and gorging on it. They're instead gorging on the finest steakhouses that they can go and write off for meetings to, and play golf during the day and have their 2 hour workouts in the morning. So I just think they don't put in the work, and I don't even think they have the sensibility for it if they did.
Sounds like, RC, that those GMs sounds like a really comfortable position. So, but obviously they don't last long when they don't do their job, right?
No, and it's mostly who's a buddy with the owner.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's transition to a news item from San Francisco. Not Trent Baalke. I was looking at the chat. He was in San Francisco at one point. He was their GM, but Ricky Pearsall, RC. I think there was a injury. Did he injure himself in practice? Should we start taking him down in our rankings? Like, what are you hearing about this injury?
He was put on the injury list to start camp, which isn't shocking. I mean, that we see a lot of players going on that if they have any minor injury at all. But I just am noting, and I think it's out there too, but just noting that because a lot of people asked when he went on the injury list if there was something up. He does have a hamstring issue. They're just being extra cautious with it because there's no reason for them to push it at this stage, even though with a rookie you want him out there. But Ayuk did report to practice, so the combination of those two things, when you hear hamstring, you get a little worried, and then Ayuk reporting means that Pearsall is not going to that Ayuk's not going to be gone, and then Pearsall's going to have to slide into the number 2 spot. So bad news continues to rain down on Pearsall 2024. I see him sliding in dynasty rookie drafts. To me, Pearsall was interesting when it looked like Ayuk might be gone, but it's really Pearsall is more dynasty wise for the future. I'm not counting on him to be a megastar in 2024, but the likelihood that he could splash big in 2024, that seems to be going away fast, as it looks like Ayuk's going to be back. And I really liked Pearsall for 2025 and beyond because I thought Ayuk is going to be gone. I don't think that San Francisco is going to pay him that money. But if Ayuk comes back, that really is a hit to Pearsall. I like Debo Pearsall. I don't like Ayuk Pearsall. One of Debo or Ayuk is going next year. I always thought it was going to be Ayuk, but maybe it's not going to be. It's up in the air. I was very confident it was going to be Ayuk, but now I'm kind of on the fence.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see what happens to Ayuk at the end of the day. But RC, before hitting the chat, one last item you wanted to talk about, something going on with Derrick Henry. Any update you wanted to share with us on him?
Just a very quick update, then we can get to the chat. But somebody sent me a little phone recording clip of Baltimore practice, and it was a play with Derrick Henry with Patrick Rashard, the fullback, who's arguably the best blocking fullback out there, or one of. So Rashard a fullback and Henry behind him, and then just them running a running play with those two guys is like stunning to watch. I mean, Derrick Henry's in such great shape, and Patrick Rashard is an offensive lineman who plays fullback. So that's going to be one heck of a combination when they go for a short yardage run. When Tennessee would go for a short yardage run, it would usually be just Henry single setback and just try to move the pile. Then when the offensive line got so bad they couldn't move the pile as easily, he's not going to have that issue in Baltimore, I don't think. Much better offensive line, but then I kind of forget that they also have a great fullback when the time calls for it, to give him just a little extra boost of blocking as well.
I remember he was in Atlanta during their Super Bowl run, and he was always really good, RC, blocking for Freeman. So Rashard is definitely up there. I remember watching him as well. So that's interesting that you pointed that out. But let's hit the chat if there was nothing else. So first question, Silent Warrior, read your latest mock today. Would you think your receiving corps would have been better with Devontae at 10 instead of Garrett Wilson?
That's a great question. My heart was with Devontae. I ended up taking Garrett Wilson because I know there's people who are hot to trot to if I'm looking to trade, if I wanted to get into a different wide receiver, if I wanted to get a shot at getting up into trying to get an Amon-Ra or whoever I could try to play, if I wanted to make a play for Tyreek, having Garrett Wilson as part of the deal to go get one of those mega wide receivers that I value more, Garrett Wilson way over Devontae Adams is the one you want to have to make a trade. But if I was going to be stuck with one or the other, my heart really is with Devontae over Garrett Wilson. That doesn't mean that I don't think Garrett Wilson's doomed for failure, but the whole Jets situation is making me ill at every turn, and Devontae Adams is such an unbelievable talent. And if I knew for sure, and I'm pretty sure, but if we knew for 100% sure that Aiden O'Connell was going to be the starting quarterback, that would probably put me over the top of going with Devontae over Garrett Wilson in my heart of hearts. But I took Wilson in that mock with the intent on trading him, and Wilson has way more trade value. He's way sexier because he's younger.
Especially RC if he just has a game, right? Or like that could be enough. Like week 1, going into San Francisco, Aaron Rodgers returning to the Bay. I don't think San Francisco's secondary is all that great. Maybe he could have a moment on Monday night and his value will just shoot through the roof, and you could basically trade him for maybe one of the top receivers at that point.
Or Mike Williams isn't back. The Jets go into a tough game with San Francisco. San Francisco still has a good defense. They maybe don't have the front line corners that are at the top of everybody's favorite list, but they're pretty good. And San Francisco always seems to find a way to have a good defense. If they go in there with no Mike Williams and they're going to go at him with Wilson, Conklin, and
Corley
or Xavier Gibson, I know if I'm San Francisco, I'm just going to plan to shut down Wilson and make a rookie or Tyler Conklin beat me. I'm not going to let Garrett Wilson beat me. Then I think the following week
they play Tennessee.
I was going to say, I think they're at Tennessee
Thursday night, I believe.
Two great corners, two good plus corners.
Yeah.
It may be a slow start for Garrett Wilson. So if I wanted to if I can get that hot game, I'll flip Wilson. What if he has a crap game? Let me just flip it around on you, because you could be right. That's a very plausible scenario. He goes off on the first game and then everybody goes wild for him. But the opposite could happen, where he has a bad game and the Jets look terrible and everybody goes, I knew it. Rodgers is shot. This team sucks. Then if they lose to Tennessee,
which they will,
Tennessee, which I think is very possible,
short week,
and he has another not great game, everybody's going to be bailing. Then I will have the opposite of hot trade value for Wilson. So I would take Wilson with the intent on trading him before he even sees the field for me week one.
Yeah. I apologize if I said Thursday night. That game's actually Sunday, but the Jets are going to have a short week, obviously, going off Monday Night Football, going all the way back home, and then traveling to Tennessee, so their schedules are going to be all distorted. And then, RC, here's the situation. If you gamble, you play them week one, right? You let Wilson go up against the San Francisco secondary, which, I said wasn't all that great, but I was kind of considering them without Ufunga, who he should be back, I think, by week one, maybe. So that will definitely give them a boost. But if you gamble and you're wrong, he's almost guaranteed to do bad against Snead and the Titans' revamped secondary. So
and if he does bad against San Francisco, it's going to be because they looked and they saw and they went, we need to shut down Wilson and try to let the other guys go ahead and beat us, and they don't. And then Tennessee's going to copy the same thing with better corners. It could be a bad first two games out of the chute. And then the media pressure, they're going to be, if Aaron Rodgers shows any sign of failure, then he is going to be in a war with the media trying to bury him. And then Wilson's going to throw fits. And I think the Jet situation has gone from interesting to totally combustible for me over the last couple months. I am all the way the hell out on the Jets. I'm keeping some of my cheap bets on them winning the division when I got all excited about the offensive linemen they signed and all the upside it seemed like they were going to have. And they still have a great defense. Their defense could carry them, put them on their back, and get them maybe to the playoffs, or maybe even win that division if the Bills struggle and the Dolphins continue to be a fraud. But I'm less and less and less confident about that Jets team.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on. Silent Warrior. Yeah, I think with so many viable targets in Houston, I'm favoring Cooper at a similar ADP. I think he's referring to Amari Cooper when we were talking about Diggs, Collins, whatnot.
Yep.
Peyton had that year making Stokely, Wayne, and Harrison wide receiver ones. It would have been crazy to see if it was just Harrison, right, by himself there. It would have probably been an epic season for him. But William Newcomb, Diggs undervalued this year, and then he provided the injury to Rasheen Ali. It was a bicep. Ross, May is bad. Yeah, he definitely didn't land in the
The 3-word
best
scouting
situation.
report that is on point.
Very simple. Tom Finn, 2018. CEH. What a waste of 1.02, which I believe is the second overall pick in Dynasty rookie drafts. I could have taken Lamb, but I needed a running back. I mean, journeymen have looked like studs playing for KC, and CH couldn't get it done. He's right.
And we were all there. I did not understand the CEA. I didn't understand why Kansas City drafted him so high. I don't know why they drafted him ahead of Jonathan Taylor. I didn't understand a lot of things from that, but I was right there to get sucked into. But man, that's a great landing spot. Well, that didn't necessarily play out.
The
as
LSU
advertised.
effect was real for him. So playing with Burrow on that national championship team, that really prodded up his value. Ross.
And
Yeah.
Cincinnati having no interest in him, Joe Burrow's team having no interest in a cheap signing of CEH lets you know what Burrow really thinks of him.
And remember, it's not like Burrow's silent about people he wants. He
I know.
lobbied for Chase. So if CH was all that good, he would have probably done the same for him.
Yeah, if you're going to sign a basic contract, you could have signed it anywhere.
Yeah.
You signed it with Cincinnati, and you could have been telegraphing that way in advance that, hey, I'll come and play with you guys. Just offer me a deal. I'm going to come back with Burrow. So if Burrow went to Cincinnati and said, hey, we can get this guy for cheap, get him for me, and they said no, I can't even comprehend that would happen.
Never. No way. Okay. Ross, neither May nor McCarthy is starting this season.
Correct.
Or is starting the season. Sorry, I shouldn't say this season. Agreed with that. Barring a preseason injury, I can't see either of them opening as the starter in week 1. Tom Finn, 2018. At least I got Pacheco 2 years ago, later at 4.12, thanks to RC. RC, that was the year where you not only had Pacheco, but you also called Rashad White, both late round guy. I forgot where Pacheco even went in the draft, but I think Rashad White was a 7th rounder, right?
Rashad White had some that he was going either very late first or early second in a dynasty rookie draft.
Okay.
But we had I didn't fully get the Rashad thing till a little later, maybe when I started seeing him in the preseason. Then I moved him up to the top guy eventually available. So he was the first rounder that people were taking. I think it was Tyler Algier was the second rounder. Jelani Woods was the third rounder, and then we were getting Pacheco 4th and 5th. Then Pacheco got heat in August, and he started moving up to being a 2nd or 3rd rounder. So getting him, we're having to spend 2nd round money on Pacheco eventually. But prior to that, for all the people that draft the Dynasty Rookie Draft right after the NFL Draft or soon after, Pacheco was hardly on even lists of available guys that they wouldn't even show up in the queue. You had to go searching for him in the queue, and we were just plucking him all day long in the 5th round, 4th round, whenever it is that we wanted him. But then he caught heat late July when the camps opened up. Some good words started coming out, and then in August he went from not even a 5th rounder to 4th rounder, 3rd rounder, 2nd rounder. He may have even gotten into the 1st round by the September rookie drafts.
Yeah. Okay, Ross, Fields isn't starting either. Agreed. And although if Pitt starts 0-6 with that nasty schedule, Pittsburgh,
I wouldn't be. Yeah, I think that all 3 of those situations, the backup's going to start eventually because they're all
right
shaky teams.
Yeah,
but they're not starting on purpose week 1.
Yeah, it's not to say they're not going to see any snaps, but there's no way any of those 3 teams, barring injury, are going to play the current QB2s. Keep matriculating. 6-point PPR Superflex Dynasty. Ooh, RC. Since I joined the Dynasty League, I'm going to like this question too. all things being equal, who do you prefer for the 28th spot on a 28-man roster? Chris Rodriguez, Deneric Prince, or Jalen Coker? Can you rank them?
It would be Prince if I had Pacheco, but if all things being equal, it's Coker by a mile, because I think he'll end up being the Panthers' best wide receiver potentially in 2025, 2026. I don't think Prince is ever going to be I don't think he'll supplant Pacheco and become the new number one running back, and nor will Rodriguez in Washington. But Coker could be a top guy when we get past the Bryce Young era. But if I had Pacheco, I would take Prince to protect myself, and then I would just bide my time because Coker's not going to have a year. He'll be on waivers. He'll be forgotten. He'll be able to be gotten in throw-in deals, I think. I mean, he may really shine in the preseason and get some heat, but they'll forget that by October, November when he's not even playing. Yeah. And even if he does somehow get into, if he's the number 4 and he's getting into the rotation, or even he works his way to being a number 3, because it's still going to be Bryce Young.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to operationally take Prince in a deep roster because there's no running backs. So you got to have your running back and his backup. But Coker's the talent. Prince is the operationally sound choice. Then you can go get Coker later, hopefully.
With Coker, the hope is the second iteration of the post-Bryce Young Panthers. That's what you're hoping for. Or, as we discussed in our video, RC, if somehow, some way, it's probably not going to happen. If the guy goes to practice squad and gets signed by another team, maybe there could be hope for him in 2024. So check out that video, though, if you guys want a deep dive on Coker. Silent Warrior. Grab Bears' fewest wins on DK for plus 7,500 earlier. Carolina, their only competition there. Minnesota, maybe. RC, what do you think?
Carolina, Minnesota, New England might be in that race because they have such problems on the offensive line. But I would think that Carolina and...
You think Giants are up there?
Every time I run simulations for the seasons, the Giants seem to come out with 5-6 wins, so there must be something about their schedule. I can see betting on the Bears to collapse, because if Caleb really is not ready and he's going to be thrust into that situation, there's going to be all kinds of problems. All kind of hell's going to break loose in Chicago. With Carolina, I already know Bryce is bad and he's still there. And then Minnesota's got a good coaching staff. They've got good other players. They've got a good offensive line. But Sam Darnold and Bryce Young are probably the two worst starting quarterbacks. Caleb may be right there with them, but I have to see him in the pros to really say that. I've already seen Sam Darnold. I've already seen Bryce Young. I don't need to see any more. But for the odds, if you play a basket of them, Carolina's probably got pretty good odds to be at the bottom. But if you played a basket of Chicago, Minnesota, and Carolina, you're probably going to get one of them is going to be right.
Yeah. But probably the odds on Carolina is so low that it's not going to really give you anything. But
yeah, I mean, if you put them as kind of like a blackjack insurance chip,
yeah,
and then if it's them, maybe you get your money back or most of your money back on all of your bets. But then if you're right, if it's not them and it's Chicago, Minnesota, the odds will be way in your favor. It'll pay for all of your bets on the other teams.
Yep. Okay. William Newcomb. I feel bad for Roman Wilson. I think RC does too. Stuck with Arthur Smith.
Yep. he could be one of the, like, if he had gotten to the Ladd McConkey spot with the Chargers, where the only kind of talent at wide receiver that they have, it would have been a whole different story. And if McConkey had landed with Pittsburgh, then I wouldn't even be hardly talking about Ladd McConkey besides sobbing quietly about it. So, but Roman Wilson is in the problem zone this year, sadly.
William Newcomb.
And with Calvin Austin is really causing a lot of that problem. I thought this is going to be Pickens and Roman Wilson as the 1-2 punch, and Wilson may actually come out of that alive because of all the attention that'll go on Pickens, and they tend to throw Pickens out to the wolves to just go deep, and then they try to throw underneath to Roman Wilson could be the Deontay, but now it looks like Calvin Austin is going to be that guy, so.
Yeah. We'll see. William Newcomb again. Maybe the QB that finishes the season for Minnesota is not yet on their roster. Interesting.
To me, it's going to be McCarthy would finish the season. When things go bad, they'll be forced to start taking a look at McCarthy.
Yeah. Ross, one thing not to overlook with the Vikings. Excellent coaches. O'Connell and Flores are both underrated. I agree. RC, it felt like the Vikings D really didn't have all that much last year, but Flores made something out of nothing.
I don't know.
You don't agree with that?
I'm getting on the fence with, I thought O'Connell was going to be a young genius, and then I'm watching the utter destruction of that team around him, and it's because of the way this is. I didn't get it last year when they had with Cousins. That's a legit playoff team, and you think, okay, we need to shore up some issue areas. You know, the easiest thing to fix or improve is your running back, and instead they go out and they pay a bunch of money to Alexander Mattison. That tells me you guys don't know what the hell you're doing if you put a bunch of money into Alexander Mattison as your main running back. That was a disaster. So then this year they go and run Cousins off and then overtrade for Dallas Turner, who's a waste compared to what they could have done, what could have happened for them with defensive picks. I mean, Dallas Turner's okay, but he wasn't worth trading up for. And then they traded up for J.J. McCarthy, who was, of all of the quarterbacks we're talking about that are problematic from this draft, McCarthy's probably the worst of them, and they traded up for him. So everything I watch them do, they're doing it to themselves. They're self-inflicted wounds. So they may be great coaches. They maybe squeeze a couple extra wins out of this team, but Jordan Addison is starting to become a problem. Their running back situation has not been handled right. It's like they inherited Cousins and Jefferson, and they ruined half of that, and then and they inherited, I believe they inherited Darrisaw, and he's great, but everything around that, I just don't get what they're doing, who they're running off, their cornerback situation. I mean, it's just. Maybe they're great coaches, but they are not good with personnel. They are making arguably some of the worst personnel decisions in the NFL the last 2 years. When you take the draft and free agency and who they've spent money on, it makes no sense what they are doing.
Okay. William Newcomb agree the QB selections are befuddling. Tom Finn 2018. I couldn't pull the trigger on Wilson after suffering with Deontay since Big Ben's last season.
Yep. That's a smart thing.
Then Ross Jacobs. Geno has excellent mechanics. This is when we were kind of talking about how Geno was, kind of written off and came back and played well for the Seahawks. He has excellent mechanics and is smartish with the football. Darnold is neither. And then some stuff about Logan Thomas. Ricky will scroll down to Tom Finn 2018. I like RC's theory about QBs that play for weaker programs without being surrounded by multiple NFL caliber wide receivers and O-lines being better prepared for the NFL. I mean, certainly Mahomes was like that, right? In Texas Tech, they didn't really have all that much surrounding him.
One of the best examples of a guy who played for a lesser program with a bad offensive line that was constantly getting killed and didn't hardly have a real wide receiver around them is Will Levis in Kentucky. And when I scouted him and watched him, I'm like, this guy is really good. He's just so outclassing his surroundings that, man, if he had protection and he had weapons, how good would he be? And he's already good from what I'm seeing. So then he walks right into kind of a similar situation in Tennessee with bad receivers outside of Hopkins and a team that always wanted to run the ball with a totally broken down offensive line. That's why I'm so excited about Levis this year is that the new regime came in and totally built everything around him, kind of like what Houston is doing. Houston's like, we got CJ Stroud, let's build around him. Tennessee, the new staff comes in and like, we got Levis, we want to be a passing, credit ownership and the GM. Like, we got Will Levis. We're not going to be a Mike Vrabel run team. We are going to be maybe the most pass-happy team in the entire NFL. And in order to do that, see you later, Derrick Henry. We're going to have two running backs who are like mini wide receivers on the field. And we're going to have a trio of wide receivers who are legit. They're not Nick Westbrook-Akine and Chris Moore. And we're going to put it all on Levis's shoulders and let's go. So Levis has finally got that, what he didn't have at Kentucky and what he didn't have at Tennessee last year. But when you see guys like that succeeding, despite those, and you saw the sparks and the things that Levis was doing last year with the Titans, it's like they're just having better surroundings away from a breakout. So I think that's what's about getting ready to happen.
And then speaking of QBs having advantages, Ross pointed out he's skeptical of Penix since he had 3 NFL receivers and an all-star O-line, only took 5 sacks all year. And RC, I remember very vividly in the college football playoffs against Texas, it was a crazy good performance, but then, not having much rest going into the national championship game, right? Because leading up to the Texas game, he had some time off. He could heal. He was well prepared. He looked really sharp. But then, between the semifinal and the Natty, it's not too much of a break. And he looked pretty bad against Michigan, no?
I didn't think it was... when I saw it live, I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe Penix is struggling like this. When I watched it back again a couple of times, it really wasn't as bad as I thought. And I was watching Penix again today because I was scouting Ross, the cornerback from Arizona, for the Devy reports. So I picked to watch one of his games against Washington to see how he did when he matched up against Odunze and Polk and all that. And that guy's a really good corner for Arizona or Arizona State, whichever one he's with. And I got a new appreciation for just how good Penix is watching a good cornerback for the other team, in that Penix has such an ability to see what's going on in the field. He would look over at the side that this cornerback was on, who, let's just, for the sake of this argument, say he's a real shutdown corner. For college, he's definitely a shutdown type of corner. They would send a Dunzier out there. They would send Polk out there. He always stayed on this. He was like Sauce Gardner. He would just stay on his one side of the field. And most quarterbacks would have the scouting report, know that that guy's on one side of the field, and then they just work the other 2/3 of the field. They'd stay away from that guy. Penix wasn't staying away from him. Penix would drop back, look that way from time to time, especially when a Dunzier was out there, but he would see that it wasn't there, that it was covered. He wouldn't try to force it. He would then just check off to his next reads. Yes, he was helped by having good protection, but part of it is twofold. Penix makes great decisions. He gets rid of the ball in a blink when it's there, when the receiver busts open right off the jump. But if that receiver's covered, Penix can go to a second and third read better than anyone in this draft, and that's a rare quality because most quarterbacks, I'm watching for the Devy studies and all that, they know where the play is going. They're going to throw it in that direction no matter what, and hope that the receiver makes the play or that it just goes incomplete. Or if they're a running quarterback, if it's not there, then they'll just take off and run. Penix is one of the rare guys that can go 2 and 3 reads, and he doesn't get spooked in the pocket, and he can release it in a blink and get it where it needs to go. But one of his best attributes is he sees what's happening. He does not throw into coverage and make egregious mistakes. I feel like Penix is in total control of the game more than any of the quarterbacks from this draft class. I don't think Caleb Williams is in control of much of the game. He's just running around in circles, and he makes great plays off script, but he's not going to do that in the NFL. He's going to have to be in the pocket. The same problems that Justin Fields ran into, Caleb Williams is going to run into, only Caleb Williams isn't the runner that Justin Fields is. So I am only more emboldened by how good Penix is this day. Just happened to be watching him today. Or not watching him, watching the defense against him. But what stood out was how good Penix was working that corner, that side, and staying away from it when it needed to be stayed away from.
Music to my ears, RC. I'm happy that he's looking good on tape. Then Tom Finn, 2018, went on to say, I think playing behind Cousins will be a blessing for him. I agree. I think learning from Cousins is a big thing, and just getting acclimated to the pros. And the way that Cousins' contract is structured, Atlanta can basically move off of him after 2 years. But if they really wanted to, they could take a medium-sized cap hit. I think like 40 to 50-ish million. I guess it is high, but if they wanted to,
they'll also be able to trade him.
Yeah, they could probably trade him
and take some of that money and send it to the other team.
Yeah. So,
but I think there could be a moment in Atlanta this year where Cousins gets concussed. And I think you brought this up too. Cousins gets concussed. Cousins has to miss a game. Something happens that forces Penix into the game. And I think Penix is one of the rare guys from this draft class that you can just drop him in today, week 2, not even working with the ones that much. You just drop him into a game week 2.
Oh man!
Have Cousins get his lung punctured by the doctor, like Tyrod Taylor did, and all of a sudden Penix has to start with 15 minutes notice, and he just goes out there, and you're like, well, why did we give all this money to Kirk Cousins? There's going to be a quarter controversy just waiting to happen in Atlanta.
And you said week 2 off the top of your head, but keep in mind week 2 for Atlanta is on the road against the Eagles. Could you imagine if Cousins went down in that game? Penix on Monday Night Football just went crazy. Like, how could you not start him the following week after that?
I think I want Penix to play. Is it week 4 against Kansas City?
Week 3.
And you could see the new Mahomes versus the existing Mahomes.
Oh man, in Atlanta, yeah, that would be nuts too. You imagine he like beats the defending Super Bowl champions, like that's another one. But anyways, I'm getting too excited as a Falcons fan. Let's move on before I start going crazy. Ross, I still think it was smart of Atlanta to take the shot because QB is everything, and if Penix works out, he has a high ceiling. When we were live streaming RC, I mean, you guys can go back and rewatch the tape. Ross, myself, and RC, I was in shock. I couldn't believe the screen. I didn't know what to feel at that point, but reflecting upon it 3 months later, I like the move too, and especially if you think that Penix can be your guy and you don't think you're going to pick there, as opposed to Cousins playing out 2 years and, you know, us having draft picks in the 20s. You didn't have to trade up for him or anything. So hopefully the QB situation solved in Atlanta for the foreseeable future, but you never know.
Arthur Blank's going to get the MVP in 2024 for getting rid of Arthur Smith and acquiring Penix when everybody thought he was stupid to do so.
Should it be Arthur Blank or should it be Jameis Winston for scoring on Atlanta late in the game?
Co-MVPs.
For those of you that didn't get that reference, Jameis Winston, instead of kneeling on the last play of the Falcons Saints game, gave the ball to Jamal Williams. He scored. Arthur Smith went ballistic, got fired.
Against his coach's wishes.
Against his coach's wishes, but Arthur Smith didn't see it that way and went after Dennis Allen. So that's why Jameis Winston, if Penix ends up being great, if Raheem Morris is an excellent head coach, you will be my second favorite quarterback in the league or whatever of all time. Anyways, William Newcomb, Penix has the aggressiveness that isn't learned. Ross agrees. RC, do you agree with that too?
And it's from when it's like watching CJ Stroud college tape. When you see a guy that is just totally working the defense, that's in such control of what's going on, and is just picking it apart, even with the most difficult matchups. Even when Penix struggled in the Michigan game, it wasn't that I didn't see him at a loss for what he was doing. Michigan played a good game. They had a tough defense.
Yep.
And Penix had a couple near miss throws. Could have been too excited. Could have been nervous. The pressure may have gotten to him a little bit, but that was unlike most of Penix's games. But Michigan's defense was unlike most of the defenses that he was going to face. But I never saw Penix like scared or throwing egregious passes into coverage late in the game when they were down and he had to make something happen. He started taking some chances because he had to. But the aggressiveness of Penix is, I think he just sees it like CJ Stroud sees it. And it's just the game slows down for them. I always put it in terms of I played most all of the sports in my younger days, and I always think about I was a football quarterback and a basketball point guard, and I was a limited athlete as the levels got higher, but I always remember when I played basketball as a point guard, I could see the game in such slow motion. I obviously I'm going to invoke this just to try to put it into some context. which is going to be the comparison of the decade. But in my little world, in my little league, and divisions that I played in against that competition, I think I could see it. I could see everything happening like a Magic Johnson. I could do all of the no-look passes. I pulled passes out as a point guard that I can still remember today, that I'm amazed that I don't even know how I saw it. It's like my body was in another dimension, seeing everything just going in slow motion, and I knew where to put the ball, where to deliver it to someone else to put them in the position to get a layup, a dunk, or whatever. I would amaze the crowd. I would amaze myself. I can't believe where this came from. And I was always just stunned by that ability. Now, eventually, my lack of physical ability caught up to me, and it didn't matter if I could see the game in slow motion. Everybody got a whole lot faster, and I was still slow. But at the same time, when I was that good in basketball up until a certain point, I played quarterback at football, and I was so afraid of getting sacked. I was so afraid of getting hit as a young quarterback. When I dropped back to pass, when they called a pass play, I was like, oh, damn, why did they call a pass play? We had a really good running team. Like, why did they call a pass play? So we only had limited pass plays, and I would drop back to pass, and I knew that the pass was really supposed to be on like the right-hand side of the field. I couldn't see anything. Everything was like it was a rainstorm, or that I had, I needed strong glasses, but somebody stole my glasses, so I was playing without them, and I was like half blind. And I would just like, there's somebody that's supposed to be out over to the right. I'm going to drop back as fast as I can, and I'm going to get rid of it as fast as I can so somebody doesn't hit me. I was so afraid of being hit when I was younger. I was the worst quarterback in the world. I couldn't see the field for nothing. In practice, I was pretty good, to pull it back to what we were talking about much earlier. I could kind of see it okay because it was no contact. Nobody was going to hit me. So, but when contact was on, man, I was terrible. But in basketball, it was totally different. I could see it. So I think guys like Penix and Stroud and all that, they just see it at a whole other level, that a confidence comes from it. I can remember having that confidence as a young basketball player till it got taken away by way better players and athletes later on. But there was a time when I was like, I can take it at anybody. I knew it. But in football, I knew I was the most scared person on the field, and I was trying to hide it, and that made me a terrible player. And I completed a couple passes just because it kind of went out towards the receiver and they made the catch. But those are two extreme examples. But I think Penix, just watching him again today, he just has that innate knowing of seeing everything that's going on, and it's all poetry to him, is the only way I can describe it. You see with CJ Stroud in that Georgia game as a great example, probably one of the most masterpiece games I've ever seen a quarterback play. Joe Burrow in his season, watching him play, unbelievable. So I think it's just they have that little X factor that like a Sam Darnold does not.
They have that Fisher gene. The RC
Yes.
Fisher gene.
Magic Fisher.
Yeah, there we go. All right. So we're done with the Magic Fisher segment. I'm sure all of you are looking forward to
It'll come back around.
Comes and goes throughout the off season. But Ross, it's McVay, not Snead, which we were talking about. Who's really the brains behind the Rams? Ross thinks it's McVay. Sounded like RC did too when we were talking about it. And then we started talking about McClay with Dallas and how Ross and RC both respect him. But what one move, RC, that they made in the third round, I remember during our day 2 live stream, it caught both of you guys off guard. They drafted Maurice Liafau. I don't know how to enunciate his name. I think he was a linebacker from Notre Dame, and both of you guys were confused. I don't know if you guys both had a chance to go back and look at the tape, but could this be another McClay situation where he saw something that nobody else is seeing?
I always give him that respect, but I still don't. I went and looked because Zimmer's talking about it, everybody's talking about him. I don't see it, but I have to catch myself that McClay may see it better than I do. Or maybe it wasn't a McClay pick, it was a Mike Zimmer talking to Jerry Jones pick. I don't know.
Yeah, could be, especially if Zimmer's coming out and singling him out as a third round rookie. Maybe,
but I'm not there yet on him. But I'm willing to say I might be behind the times on it.
Yep.
Two preseason games in, ask me again.
Yep. Will do. Okay, so then Ross went on to say that McClay is way better than Ernie at scouting. Ernie was good at recalling helpful details for game plans. Good note. Tom Finn 2018. Then there's Balky. If he was doing a dynasty rookie draft, he would take Troy Franklin at.
Wait a minute, we got something. Too. Don't skip over.
I'm not gonna. I was gonna go back to him. I just didn't want to cut off because I think Tom Finn meant to put that second comment first. But I was not coming back to that. That's an important situation. Comment. Yeah, exactly. But RC, yeah. Let's jump straight to that. Mr. Smith caught us live from Australia. That is freaking awesome. We love having you on here, and I think he has a question later on in the chat, and we will get to it. But thank you so much for tuning in all the way from Australia. That is freaking cool. Then Ross went on to say Balky isn't as bad as Steve Keim somehow. RC, do you agree with that?
Keep skipping over where we were at. Balky isn't as bad as Steve Keim. They're both bad. With Balky, there's guys who wouldn't take a coaching job unless they got rid of him. So he has that on his resume. But I was caught up. I was thinking about the. Okay. I thought it was a dynasty draft question. I was so confused that who's taking Tony Franklin at the 102? I get the joke now. Now I'm caught up. I was bouncing from Australia to Balky bashing to I'm all caught up now.
Yeah, RC, there was a lot going on there between you reliving your glory days as a Magic Fisher. But okay. William Newcomb just pointing out that Pearsall was a hamstring injury. Thank you. Ross Jacobs, he's a 2025 play. That's fine. And then Silent Warrior met Travis Hunter Saturday. That is freaking cool. Talked to him a bit, but definitely wasn't 6'1" like he's listed. Probably will be a corner in the NFL. Cool guy. RC, I think in both of your Devi reports, you guys had in both you and Ross had, I think, a similar conclusion there, but I'll let you comment on that.
I think he could be the number one pick in the draft just because it's so unique that he's a legit starting corner in the NFL talent, but I think he's also a legit starting wide receiver talent in the NFL. And I'm sure a team would if they're interested in taking him as high as number one, it's going to be because they're going to use him on both sides of the ball. Now, that's what a smart GM would do. I don't know if there are any smart GMs, so he's probably not going to go number one, and he's probably not going to get used at wide receiver much, but they should use him both ways. I don't mean they have to have him out there every snap at wide receiver, but he should be in the rotation of wide receivers. I think he's if he put his mind to just being a wide receiver, he'd be a first round wide receiver, and he already is a first round corner. So you're getting that in the same guy. that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what Dion was too, right? I'm not saying that he's going to be Deion Sanders or get close to being like one of the best of all time, but like that, it just reminds me a lot about what he used to do.
And it's not like, oh, this is cute, let's put him in at wide receiver for a jet sweep, and let's get him a bubble screen and see if he can take it back like he's on the return team. I mean, Travis Hunter is like a legit get open, make great catches wide receiver. I don't think Deion Sanders was that back in his day. He was just a gadget gimmick on offense.
Yeah.
But Travis Hunter, to me, has a ton of great wide receiver traits, but it's just not his primary focus.
Yeah, but I don't know that he can play like 100 snaps in the NFL, man. The way they use him in Colorado is pretty crazy. So we'll see. We'll see how maybe even this year we'll get glimpses of it too. Maybe Colorado's not going to want to play him all that, like want to, tire him out or risk injury or anything, especially if he has a shot of going 1 overall.
Well, I think they're going to. I think Deion doesn't care anything about anything besides himself, and if that's his best player, he's going to have him on the field for all of the snaps to try to win the Heisman, so that he can have a Heisman Trophy winner, unless he throttles him back because he doesn't want him to take the Heisman away from his son, who he delusionally thinks is going to be the number 1 pick in the draft someday.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Ross, Pearsall plays the same game as Ayuk. Makes sense to move him. And then he mentioned that Silent Warriors info on Travis Hunter not looking like a 6'1" is good. Ross didn't think he looked that big on tape. Silent Warrior followed up and said, yeah, I'd say 5'11" max. That's pretty crazy that he's 2 inches under his listed height. Ross, considering there's only like 3 fullbacks left in the league, curious how the Baltimore O-line comes together after losing 3 starters. Yeah, that's definitely a concern for them. Keep matriculating with the understanding that it may be fantasy football dubious. Regardless, is there any further insight into Kendrick Bourne or Demario Douglas's situation or your preference in New England?
I think they'll both be in the... If Kendrick Bourne is back, I mean, we got to see him get cleared to get back and play. So the fact that Bourne hasn't been fully cleared yet tips the scale to Demario Douglas. But I think what will happen, my vision of what's going to happen with the Patriots is they're not very good. They have a bad offensive line. So they're going to be down in games, and they're going to have a tough time running the ball. But Jacoby Brissett is a pretty good quarterback, and like with Washington last year with a terrible offensive line, they injected him into a couple games, and he has the heart of a warrior, and he just gets after it. Demario Douglas will be the bubble screen and quick hitter, nice guy to have. May get a lot of targets because New England's playing a lot of playing from behind a lot. But if Kendrick Bourne gets cleared and is fully healthy, the way that they've paid him, the way that they treat him, the relationship he has with the owner, Kendrick Bourne will be seen as that veteran leader, number 1 for the team, that could be throwing a lot against prevent defenses. And Brissett likes to air it out from just watching him this offseason in the games that he came in for Washington. I mean, he was super aggressive. So I think there's a place in the world for both of those guys. But right now, if Bourne hasn't been cleared, it's Demario Douglas is in the lead if you have to take just one. But they could both coexist for fantasy. They're not going to be wide receiver ones or anything, but I think both can bounce around the wide receiver 2 and 3 range. on that team.
Okay, next one, Tom Finn
Un-
2018.
Until Drake May comes in. When Drake May comes in, then we're done with Bourne, and Demario Douglas would be preferred.
Does anybody win if Drake May comes in?
Demario Douglas will.
Okay. Sorry, I thought you said you were done with both, but I guess that's what happens after 2 hours of streaming. My head's getting scrambled. I apologize. Um, Tom Finn 2018. Any sleeper IDPs you have your eye on in training camp? Ross followed up and said Tyrell Dotson for sure. I haven't looked at IDP much yet. RC, do you
Uh,
agree? Is there somebody else you want to mention?
uh, if we're talking about existing training camps, not all of them, most of them haven't gotten up to beyond the rookies reporting. By next week, then everybody will be reporting and there'll be more serious practices. So I don't know if that was a question of have I seen anybody from the early training camp yet. Off the top of my head, let me look at my today's notes to see if there's anybody that I've been tinkering with. No. And as far as just in general sleeper IDPs from training camp, what I want to see, I want to see if I assume, but I want to see to be sure that Isaac, and I don't know, I forget how to pronounce his last name, Yayodum, whatever. He started half the games last year for San Francisco, and it looks like he's going to be the starter on the other side with Ward. And he had some really good games. He's bounced around the league a little bit, but I was surprised by how good his numbers were. I want to see what they're doing with him in the preseason. I want to see how Tennessee is going to be using Kenneth Murray. But maybe the biggest sleeper name I can think of that I don't think is really showing up anywhere on rankings that heavy or at all is I think PJ Locke from Denver is definitely going to be the starting safety, and I think he's a team leader, and he put up some sweet numbers in a short period of time when he got to be the starter last year. I'm going to look up real quick. I don't even think he's listed as the starter on our lads' depth charts. Oh, now he is. They had Caden Stearns there for the longest. Now they have PJ Locke. PJ Locke, if you look at his numbers from the games that he played at the end of last year, he put up some fantasy numbers. And he is definitely going to be the starter, and he's definitely a team leader for Denver. So that's the one that comes to mind the most.
All right, RC. Our special guest from Down Under has a question. Mr. Smith, question for RC. Do you think London will be a wide receiver one? And could Jaden Reed be the man in Green Bay?
I think London will be a wide receiver one or a fringe right on the edge of it. So I'm not down on London. If you already have him, I think you can have hope and you hold on to him. For redraft purposes, he's already priced like he's going to be that. So I don't have a lot of shares of Drake London in redraft because he's already priced to be that good of a player. I don't think he's cracking into the top 5 or 6. So when you look at London going 12, 13, 14, 15 among wide receivers, then you look at Amari Cooper going 25 plus. Like, I'll take there's a number of guys that are better values that are right on the par of what you can expect from Drake London. But in and of himself, I think London's going to be fine with the new regime. And I don't think there is a man in Green Bay. I think it's going to be a rotating scale of an ensemble that is 4 or 5 wide receivers deep that rotates in and out. And then Musgrave at tight end is like another wide receiver. But if there is somebody that's going to, if I had to bet on who's going to have the best fantasy numbers, PPR, it would be Jaden Reed, because he looks like the most comfortable throw that Love makes, and he made a killing on jet sweeps last year to supplement the kind of erratic targeting that Love would deal him. But if I had to bet on someone, it's going to be Reed, but I don't think he's going to be like a wide receiver one just because Love spreads it around so much.
Yeah, agreed. Okay. Ross, depending on scoring system, I think Christian Bromore is about to explode.
He did last year, so he's just going to keep on coming on. So he quietly had quite the year last year. So he'll be a top defensive tackle candidate for sure.
And then Ross went on to say, wondering if the 49er defense falls off a bit this year. And he went after I made the point that Hufanga might come back and that might be bad for Garrett Wilson. Ross is saying that Hufanga is bad for pass defense. So, RC, I mean, I wish that the 49ers kind of had a target on their back secondary-wise, because then for sure you could have easily had Wilson go crazy in prime time and then flipped him right before he gets pummeled in Tennessee. Even if they fall off, it's still scary, right? It's the 49ers, so week one.
The 49ers always seem to find a way to put a decent defense out there. They started to flop late last year. The change of defensive coordinator is a plus. Whether is it who's hurt? Is it Fred Warner? That's
no, I think it was the other. What was it?
Was it
Greenlaw?
It's Greenlaw.
Greenlaw.
Yeah. Him being out doesn't help the situation either. I look up and down their starting lineup. It doesn't get me super excited, but San Francisco's never does, and then they end up being a top 5, 6, 7 defense by the time the season's over. So I'm thinking it's going to fall off, but Shanahan always has a way of proving me wrong.
We'll see. That's going to be an interesting game. I'm really pumped up to see what Aaron Rodgers does week one, going back to his hometown, going back against the team that didn't draft him. He always has a chip on his shoulder against the 49ers, but I think he always ends up losing.
Yeah, and I don't know if he's got that. I don't know if he's got much magic left in that body of his. So
yeah, well,
surrounded with one of the worst coaching staffs assembled in the NFL. And now him and Robert Salah are having issues. I just don't. That seems like the most combustible situation.
Silent Warrior, Jets are plus 135 to miss the playoffs. I don't feel like that's enough juice for me to gamble like that. I would want more. And then he went on to say also parlayed the under 6.5 wins for the Bears with the over 10.5 wins for the Rams to get plus 1,200. I like that a lot better. That's a smart play. Those are great odds.
If Stafford stays healthy,
they're hitting that 10.5.
The Rams will get there. Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, the 49ers, I think this plays into the Rams' advantage, but I think that they have a pretty bad schedule when it comes to like rest advantages, disadvantages. Obviously, that's not the end-all, be-all, but it's a big component to it. So that's another positive for the Rams. Ross, the funny part was his first game when he went for 138 and a TD, and everyone just knew he was a stud. That was
CEH.
He was referring to CEH. That's crazy. I totally forgot that he went crazy in his first game.
Not only did that happen, but then there are some leagues that don't draft until after the Thursday night game, before the Sunday games. So, and I think they were FFPC had some leagues like that, but I was involved with some folks advising them on leagues that didn't draft until after the Thursday game. So when they drafted, the Thursday game was in the books, and whatever you drafted from the Thursday teams, that was going to be for your week as well. You're going to be able to put them in your starting lineup. Why they did that, I have no idea. But there was a couple of them, and so CEH had that game, and then every one of those leagues that I was involved in, when I observed their draft, CEH was the number 1 overall pick in the redraft for that year. After that game.
Jeez, that is nuts.
Imagine the pain those people suffered.
That is crazy, RC. I mean, I don't remember the board from that time, but just to think that he was going 1 overall, I don't recall who was like top 5, but that's nuts.
He was closing in as a first round pick, but then having that game booked, everybody was so sure, being anything related to the Chiefs and him being a first round pick and having that game, he was the 101.
That's nuts.
And it was all downhill from there.
Keep matriculating. I'm going to skip down from some of Ross's stuff there to keep matriculating. Does Kadarius Toney have a pulse as a potential running back?
No, I saw the note that they were working about his running back. I think that's the final acts of a desperate team. I think he's going to get cut. And the next great thing that Kadarius Toney does is he'll show up on TMZ's Crime Report, or he'll show up on some reality show or something. It's not going to be as the next great running back in the NFL.
Yep. And then Ross went on to say the GM is a joke for Minnesota. And I mean, RC, if that guy misses on McCarthy, which sounds like you and Ross are thinking he will, that's a pretty strong bet. And then misses on Turner, which I know you're not high on. I forgot where Ross stood with Turner as well.
He's okay, but it's like when Arizona was taking Isaiah Simmons and forget the other guy that's
Buda
since busted.
Baker. No.
Outside linebackers. There's a kid from Oklahoma State or Tulsa or something like that. But they keep taking these outside linebackers who are useful, have something to, but you can't take them in the first round. And Minnesota's taking outside linebackers, underweight outside linebackers who are fake pass rushers, and trading up to do it in the first round. I don't understand it at all.
Then moving on, I skipped to one of Ross's comments below, and it cracked me. I can't wait to read that out loud. But skipping to another comment of Ross's, Michigan dared Penix to throw short, and he couldn't. Middle of the season, his accuracy fell off too. He's hopeful, but skeptical. So, we'll see. Evan, is Zamir White closer to this year's Rashad White or this year's Alexander Madison?
Oh, definitely closer to the Rashad White this year.
Except he's not a pass catching guy, right? Like he's gonna probably have good fantasy production like bad. Rashad. Oh, okay.
He's not bad.
Okay.
But the difference is, yes, Rashad White's a better pass catcher, but Rashad White's a better pass catcher than just about every running back in the league.
Fair.
But the difference is, Rashad White's team potentially hates him and has nothing set up for him at all. Everything he did last year was Baker panic dump off passes, not on purpose, and then Rashad White would just weave through the entire defense and score a long touchdown off a crisis dump off pass. Zamir White is actually wanted to be by their coaching staff to be the guy, and they're going to be a heavy run team by choice, and they're going to do it through Zamir White. So whatever Zamir White lacks in talent compared to Rashad White, he makes up for in the fact that his coaches love and respect him, and Tampa Bay's coaches are, I don't even want to say the word, get banned off of YouTube.
All right.
But still, Rashad's going to be great. Given all that's how great Rashad White is that he can actually be an RB1 playing for a bunch of morons.
On that note, RC, let's move on to the next comment. Ross, I'm hopeful for Penix. I think I graded him a B minus back in November. He's not a bust, just a few data points that worry me. And then it is definitely on the table that Penix could take that job early and never give it back. And he went on to say that Penix does not panic the way most others do. And finally, the comment that made me crack up.
Yeah, I caught up to the comment.
RC came from the...
I wish I was as good as Nathan Peterman.
Oh, man. RC came from the Nathan Peterman School of QBing. Ross, I was scared to...
Nathan Peterman was my ceiling. He was my upside comp.
Ross, I was scared to get hit too, but I was fast, so I played receiver and corner. If they can't catch me, they can't hit me. Okay, there you go.
I did not have that. My plan of they can't catch me, they can't hit me was call a running play so I can hand it off or pitch it out.
And then going back to Liafu RC, Ross, I had already watched tape on Liafu before the draft. He looked like crap. He's fast and can run sideline to sideline, but doesn't do anything. So
I'm gonna say this, see if Ross ends up agreeing. Liafu may be the Robert Salah of coaching, where Robert Salah is all demonstrative and fired up and fist pumping, and everybody took that as what a great coach, when really he's just an emotional cheerleader on the sidelines acting like a fake tough guy. But when it comes to the reality of coaching, this whole Jets tenure has been a complete and utter disaster. I feel like that could be what Liafu is like too, is like he looks like he's going 1,000 miles. He looks like a wild man, but then you step back and go, but he's not making any play. He's not a big playmaker. I'm not watching anything where I'm like, whoa, this guy. But he looks like he's he looks like he's trying hard. He looks like he's in high gear. He reminds me of this is getting way down in the weeds. It reminds me of Grant Stewart, Ross, if you remember him. The guy played, gave you 150% on every play. He just didn't have the and he'd hit you like a maniac, but he just didn't have the physical tools to be a starting linebacker in the NFL. But man, does he look like he's all over the place and going 1,000,000 miles an hour. But like Ross is saying, they look like that, but then they don't do anything. But it looks like they're doing stuff. It's a weird thing to see, but both he and I are on the same page, so I'm gonna say we're probably on the right track.
Yep.
If we're not, we'll both come back and apologize.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe it was a Zimmer pick, RC, and not McCoy. Ross, Balky at least hits a decent draft pick here or there. Name a single good guy that Kime picked. RC, was DJ 3K a Kime pick?
He did throw, Kime's got to get credit for David Johnson. He did throw Rosen overboard quickly. So Buda Baker's I think one of his guys as well. So yeah, they definitely they were so depressed that they did not get Amir Abdullah.
I forgot about that.
They were inconsolable that they could not get the great Amir Abdullah and had to settle for dumb David Johnson.
What was that? Was that like that
was
an
Hard
Knocks,
Amazon
right?
series? That was Amazon on Arizona.
You don't get credit for DJ if you ranked Amir Abdullah higher. Agreed, Ross. Totally agree. Okay. Ross, I'm not as sold on Hunter. Thought he looked fine. Possibly he's getting too tired playing so many snaps. I agree, man. How does the guy play 100 snaps and play at the level he's playing? If he just focused on corner, he could probably walk in and be on in the same stratosphere as Sauce. I won't say same level, but he can be in that conversation. So we'll see what he does. Tom Finn at Ross, I have Tyler Dodson, so I'm happy to hear you say that. Ross, I saw a TCU receiver toasting him multiple times. Some bad throws kept some from being completed, and I think that was in reference to Hunter. Then Ross talking about Dotson. Dotson looked fantastic on tape, and I have a ton of confidence in McDonald's defense. And then Ross just talking about the SF defense. Greenlaw is hurt, and they lost Armstead and Kinlaw. Ross talking about my comment about Zamir possibly not being a good pass catcher. Zamir's hands are actually pretty good. I went back and scouted him deeper. Definitely underrated him a bit. He's pretty darn good.
And one quick thing on Zamir, when I scouted him out of Georgia, didn't see much in him. Straight ahead runner, wasn't much in the passing game. Didn't think there was going to be much come of him, but he's still just a straight ahead runner. But if they're going to give him the ball 17 to 25 times a game, and I don't know what the Las Vegas offensive line grades and what PFF and what anybody thinks about the Vegas offensive line talent. They sucked under Josh McDaniel, and I got to give Antonio Pierce credit. I don't know what they did when Zamir White got in there, but that was as good an offensive line play as you will see from last year. They were blowing holes open for him all over the place when everybody knew he was going to run because they weren't afraid of Aiden O'Connell in the passing game. So they blew him open holes, and he hits them. And so I give him credit for that. And as every game went on with Zamir on his 4 starts last year, he got better and better. Instead of being so straight ahead, he'd actually had some wiggle and some evasiveness the more he got comfortable back there. But then we didn't really see him work in the passing game in Georgia because he didn't have to, but he really caught the ball well. I thought he was a dud in the passing game, or worried that he was, but he's actually really looked good in the passing game. So he's going to get his share of passes as well. I know Lobby is there, but he's a specialty pass game running back. Zamir's going to be on the field. He's going to get 90% of the touches in that backfield. And he's probably added another 10 pounds plus of muscle. I mean, he looks like, what Doug Martin looked like he lifts weights like Nick Chubb. I mean, all of a sudden he's like these guys that go to prison and just do nothing but lift weights. And then all of a sudden they're Olympians over 1 year. I mean, Zamir is massive now, just a bundle of muscle. So he's a completely different running back than he was coming out of Georgia. And we also now find out he can catch the ball, and the team is committed to him being the number 1 back. So I'm all in on Zamir. But all that to say, I didn't see it at first. I don't think this version of Zamir was there 2+ years ago. Yeah. But that's why you got to keep going back and re-scouting and keeping tabs on everything. You can't just stick with the scouting you had originally with them coming out of college, because so many things change, good and bad.
And then RC, just skipping down, we covered a lot of the comments that Ross talked about live next, but let's hit his last 2 comments where he was saying very straight ahead runner for Zamir, but he's so big and strong and fast, it works with enough volume. He'll get a crease eventually, and he agrees with you, Zamir is a yo. RC, I'm excited for Zamir, especially where he's going in redraft leagues. Like, he seems like a bargain.
He's starting to move up fast. Everybody's starting to get onto it. So he's going to be, I think, ultimately in August, he's probably going to be late 3rd round. I have a feeling he's going to be right with, like, Henry, Rashad, Pacheco, and now Achane are all bundled up in the same area for ADP, and Henry's actually starting to move ahead of that group. But they're all getting respect, except for Achane's falling back to them. I think Zamir White's, he's not going to catch up to them, but he's not going to be too far behind the way I'm hearing people talk about him. He's everybody's sleeper to the point that he's not going to be a sleeper for very long.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's disappointing. Hopefully, we could still get him
Yeah,
at a
you wish your
discount.
redraft was in June.
Yeah,
That's why best ball is important to play to supplement your fantasy income.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And then Ross, last comment. I'm seeing Henry around pick 15 consistently.
Ooh, man.
The H-hand falling is helpful.
Yep.
So
Henry was back in May, June. He was in the 30s, kissing the 40s in some instances. Now I'm seeing him mostly in the mid 20s, but I'm not shocked by Ross Anthony starting to see him go into the top 20.
that's crazy. Well, RC, I'll pass the mic back to you before we sign off. Do you want to give the audience with things to come on ffmetrics.com?
It's going to be a crazy week, but the one thing to note is that's going to throw my schedule off for the entire week. Tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern, I go live with the Podfather with our annual preseason extravaganza podcast. That will be a couple hours long. Joe Rogan-esque, I'm sure, even longer than this show. And there's going to be a potential wrinkle in the show for tomorrow. You can watch it live on their channel, which I think is the Player Profiler channel, or Mind of Mansion. Search will get you there. It should be on YouTube live at 11, and then it'll be alive on YouTube for all time after that too, for those that can't catch it live.
RC,
So
I'm excited
that's the big
to
thing I'm prepping
see
for.
that. Excited to see the viral moments that might pop out of there. So
Oh yeah, that's right. Last time we did this, it was the you need to be crucified and burned at the stake for saying that Rachaad White was going to outdo Bijan Robinson in fantasy football.
And then the time when you went on during this offseason, you got crushed for suggesting that Marvin Harrison was overvalued. So every time you go on the Podfathers podcast, something crazy happens. So I'm excited to see what's next.
And everybody thinks I go on there and say stuff just to be to get attention. I don't want this attention. There's no good attention from any of this. There's no everybody's like, oh, you're just doing it for clicks. There's no clicks that come. What clicks am I getting? Everybody hates me when when everybody comments on it when they put it out on YouTube as a short or whatever. 99% of the feedback is nasty to evil. There's no business. Nobody's going, wow, what a brilliant point. You're nasty and evil. You're doing this for clicks. Let me go sign up for your subscription. It hurts the business to say the things that I say, but I'm not speaking to the 99. I'm speaking to the 1. I'm forsaking the 99 and going after the 1. There's always a couple of people that hear the words and go, wait a minute, this is something way different. Let me go inspect why this guy is saying this. And I hope I get a chance to explain in detail, but sometimes the shows are moving so fast, it's bombastic statements without a ton of backup, but I've got all the backup on the website. So I appreciate the people who come over, look at the website, check around, read some of the reports, and see if it's something for them. But mostly my life is a living hell when I go on and say that Will Levis is the best quarterback from this current NFL draft. He's better than any of the quarterbacks that got drafted. Or I say that Marvin Harrison's not the number 1 or 2 or 3 wide receiver in this draft, or Rachaad White is better than Bijan Robinson, or Bryce Young is going to be a bust, or Trevor Lawrence is going to be a bust. Whenever I say that stuff, I get killed. It distracts me. I have to stay away from seeing any of it, or it's going to distract me from continuing on doing the work that I got to do. So
It's a lose-lose for you, RC, because it's like when you're right, they
yeah.
don't really give a shit, but when you're
No.
wrong, it's like,
And I don't get any clicks off of it. It's not my
Yeah.
YouTube channel that's getting clicks and making 9 cents for all of the clicks that happen from it.
I'll tell you one thing.
I get nothing out of it,
Running
but headaches and heartache.
running the FF Metrics YouTube channel, putting shorts on, that's something we try to avoid to, right? Obviously it would be great if we got a bunch of clicks or whatever, but RC doesn't like that stuff. If I floated out a short to him like that where he was just bashing someone or just negative or whatever, you probably wouldn't even want that out there. That's kind of opposite of what you're going for, right?
Yeah, because it really does there's no boost to business. If it equaled business, I would be happy to go out and tap dance for my supper, but I'm not going to get I'm not getting invited on other podcasts. I'm not getting job offers from the big fantasy I'm a heretic and all alone in a corner against the world on Marvin Harrison and Bryce Young and everybody else. So usually when I emerge victorious. So I am not daunted. I am not worried, but there will be one that doesn't go my way, and I will have a nuclear bomb dropped on my head. Everybody will remember it. Nobody on the outside will remember any of all of these that are going right. I will hear from them if it goes wrong after the fact.
That's for sure.
I never hear from them when it goes right after the fact.
Yep, exactly. Okay, RC, before we sign off, one more question. What are your favorite rookie dynasty picks of rounds 3 and later?
We got that series out there right now that I'm going through 5-round mocks and going through that and adding commentary and drafting actual picks and showing who they are and why I'm picking in whoever in rounds 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I would just shortcut it and say, if you check that series out, you'll see who I'm picking in the 3rd round from each of the 12 spots. We're doing a mock from every spot from 1 to 12 and going through who we picked and why we picked who we picked.
Awesome. Check that out, ffmetrics.com. Thank you all for tuning in. Really appreciate it. We'll be back with you guys next week. RC, one more thing.
Before you click it off,
yeah.
Is that Jazz's question or Jazz? I can't see. Really liked Rasheen Ali's tape. The vision was so apparent, but not much use for redraft behind Henry. Absolutely on point, and I love Ali. You don't need to take him in the 3rd round. He's usually available in the 4th, but sometimes in the 3rd. I think it's a tough situation with him. If he had landed on any number of other teams, I could see him pressing to be a starting running back. Like if he had landed with the Chargers, I think he would have been the co-running back with Gus Edwards type of thing. If he were to land with the Cowboys, I'd be beside myself right now. But landing with Baltimore, he's got obviously Derrick Henry is going to be the starter. So then if you're looking for a handcuff, if you're trying to handcuff like right away, like, if I invest in Derrick Henry and something happens to him, I got to have his handcuff at least to start the season. It's probably going to be Justice Hill because of the experience that Justice Hill has in that backfield. We'll see if Ali's just so good in the preseason that he ends up becoming the handcuff. But if Derrick Henry went down week 1, it would probably be Hill and Ali at best, more Hill than Ali most likely. But then when Keaton Mitchell comes back, the whole thing gets jumbled up again. So Rasheen Ali, I love him. Ross was first on him, but he is in about as bad a situation as you can be. But he may be so good that they cut Justice Hill when Keaton Mitchell comes back, and Ali is going to be the number 2 pushed ahead of Hill right away. Ali could be that good. So I'm getting shares of Ali because I have so many shares of Derrick Henry that we got in Dynasty before free agency when everybody was giving up on him and we were getting him for hardly anything. So I'm getting a lot of Ali to back him up, but it could be Justice Hill if something happens real early. But I'll know 2 weeks into the preseason where Ali is at.
Awesome. And Jaws, sorry for almost skipping over your question, but with that, I think we're wrapped up, RC. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Have a good night. Check out ffmetrics.com, and we will see you guys next week.